to episode 13, Chakras and Chakra Balancing. It's basically, in a way, two episodes rolled into one, and then it's not really. You can't really talk about chakra balancing without explaining what chakras are. It is quite interesting because chakras are so heavily featured in so many healing modalities that the one thing to research that is probably the easiest of all the healing modalities that you could research on the internet are chakras. There's thousands and thousands of pages about the chakras. So let's talk about what chakras are. Because the one thing that is also quite clear to me, especially when I sort of have clients and talk to them, is that when you do work as a healer, you actually start assuming that everybody knows what chakras are. And sometimes people go like, no, I've never heard of it. So I think it makes sense to explain it, even though we probably are the 1 millionth video out there that explains it. Okay, chakras are what we call energy centers. And these energy centers are basically, obviously, spiritual centers, but they correspond to physicalities in your body. And that makes sense because everybody asks what are chakras. I think the question that people should ask is, why are chakras? And that makes sense because the reason why they are is simply because we are spiritual beings with a body. Not physical beings with a spiritual awakening, but spiritual beings with a body. And now I'm going to explain more about it. So in total, there are 7 what we call main chakras. And it is called main chakras because they correspond to physical places and organs and the likes on our body and in our body. But there are more chakras depending on sort of what healing modalities, what sort of school of thought you're following. And it is very interesting that animals have an 8th chakra, which is in a way a see-through chakra. But we will talk about what they stand for and how this all works, because we have 7 chakras, like I just mentioned, and they correspond to a specific color. So let's just talk about the chakras that we have and what they are. Okay? So they are actually counted from the ground up. So the first chakra, even though we sort of go from here to here, but the first chakra actually starts here. So we have 7 chakras, so I explain this to you. The first chakra starts around here where my genitals are, and then go all the way down my whole entire length of my leg and feet. So that is one chakra, which is called the root chakra, sometimes also referred to as the base chakra. And the color that it corresponds to is red. And I don't know if you can show this here. What I've done in this room, I will explain the colors in a minute. But many of the people that come to me for emotional issues. And when we get to that chakra, I show you why. You can see the background here being yellow. So sometimes you can actually do healing by association. So if your your first chakra is out of bounds, then surrounding yourself with that color makes perfect sense. But here's what it really stands for. So like I said, it goes all the way down, and it has to do with your will of survival, your physical needs. As you go deeper, it is believed that emotional abuse and sort of sexual abuse, as well as childhood trauma, all the way down here, especially in the knees. There's loads of childhood trauma in the knees. And it can be assessed when you're quite capable of showing and learning how to assess chakras. So this chakra is the longest chakra of your body, and it really has to do with, like I said, with your physical needs, childhood stuff. But also, because it's a base chakra, the idea is that this is your grounding chakra, your root chakra. So if this is out of bounds, if your life is difficult, then this one goes out of sync quite a bit. Right. And like I said, I have to make this brief because there's so many chakras and so much to talk about. And remember, we're also showing you how to balance them. So we don't really have the time to go too much in depth. My advice to you would really be to Google this further and see where this is going. So that's the root chakra. Then what you have is quite interesting because, like I said, we have 7. Sort of underneath the belly button and starting at the groin, this small area here is what we call the sacral. Your sacral chakra, which would be your 2nd chakra. and the color that it corresponds to is actually orange. And this is where, in a way, your survival sits, and also the seat of sexuality really is right here. There are people that think slightly differently. They feel that sexuality and issues with it are in the root chakra. In my experience, if there is a trauma, oftentimes it has to do with something sexual. It usually manifests or shows itself more in the root as it does in the sacral. But your true seat of your sexuality is the sacral chakra. And that's sort of from the groin, in a way, up until here. Then where your belly button is, this is your third chakra, the solar plexus. And this is really your emotional seat. And it makes sense because when you look at it logically, most people that are sensitive and that are sort of deep and really sort of spiritual people, they have to trust their gut feeling. It's usually their intuition that shows them what is what. And that makes perfect sense because here is really your emotional seat. But it's also, in a way, your will sits right here, and your self-empowerment also sits right here. So this is quite an important chakra. That doesn't mean the others are less important, but this is really important if you want to start healing things. And the color is yellow. And most of the people that come to me, be it for readings or for treatments, oftentimes come to me, and the first thing then they mention is some emotional pain, and it could be from this time or this lifetime or another lifetime. And that's why I don't know if you can see this here, there's loads of yellow in this healing room, because it is the chakra or the area of my main work. Right, so that's why I sort of went a bit overboard here with the yellow. So they all correspond to colors, and I will explain this all when I'm through with them in that sense. So this is your solar plexus. Then right here is your heart chakra. The color that corresponds to it is green, and that's quite an interesting thing as well, because this is not only about, in a sense, the relationship chakra, if that makes sense. But also your heart is an involuntary organ, if that makes sense. It beats whether or not you intend it to, if that makes sense. So your trust system really sits right here, and so does your faith. And I don't mean this in a religious way, but your real trust system and what you perceive as possible all sits around here. So it's quite an important chakra in that sense, and also. You will hear later that we sort of do stuff with music and with sounds. And sounds are oftentimes, when you create sound healing, you oftentimes create it from the heart chakra, because it is one of the largest, really, up here. So that's that. Then you have another chakra, which is called the throat chakra, and that sits right here. And the color it corresponds to is blue. And this makes sense a lot because it's your throat chakra, and this is about expression. Interestingly enough, all the chakras that I've mentioned thus far, the idea is that there are, actually chakra is a Sanskrit word, and it just means wheel or disc. So the idea is that they come in a circle kind of fashion, and they go all around your system. And so when you come to the throat chakra, actually it only emanates from here. The real chakras, it's in the back of the neck. And when you talk to people, they sometimes say, well, you know, they acknowledge, yeah, you know, I really haven't expressed this, so I feel a bit tight. And they associate neck pain with them being tight, when in fact it is a blocked chakra. So there's loads of stuff that can be sort of seen here. So that's your chakra, your throat chakra, and the color is blue. And now we're getting into the sort of nitty-gritty of things, because here you have what we call the third eye, and it's right here. And it's this tiny sort of spot, and this is really where your spiritual side sits. Not necessarily your spiritual core, but your spiritual side. And you hear this a lot. I see things with my third eye, and it makes sense. And here people are divided depending on where they're from and where they have studied, because in the Western world we see the color more as indigo, and in India mainly you see the color, or they see the color rather, as purple. And I don't know if you can see this. Here's a Sanskrit version of the chakras. So you can see the third eye here as purple. We here believe that the chakra above, which is right here, your crown chakra, is actually the purple one. In their neck of the wood is oftentimes shown as white or golden. And in the end, you can apply all these colors, and colors have healing powers. I would strongly recommend for you to check out our previous video where we talked about color therapy. This will give you plenty of answers. But here is the core. This is where your spirituality sits. Because remember, I said this in every video, we came from the stars, we have implanted here specks of dust. So we're going out into the universe, and the universe comes back through us and grounds us again. So that's quite an emotionally powerful chakra as well. And that's why a lot of people say, people that are fully balanced shouldn't have headaches. It's just one of those things that people have. Obviously, there's a million and one reasons why you would probably get a migraine or headaches. So it's not, as 100% true, if that makes sense. But if you are having issues with your real spiritual core, you will feel it with lightheadedness and dizziness and all these kind of things. So this is just a quick overview, and I show this to you here. As you can see in Sanskrit, it is actually represented by flower petals. So that's another thing that for you to Google, because there's some of them that have only 2, and then there's others that have 400, and the crown chakra has even more. But these are just different depictions. And here's a little little cushion with all the chakras on them, but in the more Western tradition. And you have here the Om sign. So that's, like I said, there are different versions of this. And the idea is that these are energy centers. And it's like a bit of, it's like a wheel within a wheel. If one is not really working, all the others can be slowed down. The good thing is, because sometimes you can isolate issues and direct them towards a chakra, or they have to do with one chakra. The idea is always that you look at people holistically. So you look at us all as a holistic being, as a full person. And yet sometimes it makes perfect sense to look at one chakra and start with one chakra that might be more out of sync than the rest. This is all for later. If you haven't done this before, don't worry about this yet. This is just so that you understand that you are actually, everything that affects you in your daily life also affects your chakras. The good thing is that we have 7 chakras. There's no coincidence. We have 7 main chakras, and we have 7 main notes. As you probably already know, I don't know if you're a musician or not, it doesn't really matter at this point, but we have 7 notes, and then the notes start again. So when people say, oh, it's 1 octave, it's basically from C to C. So I explain to you the notes, and then actually show you what they mean. So we're starting again from the ground up. So you have your root chakra, which is the note C. Then you have your sacral, which is the note D. Then you have your solar plexus, which is the note E. Then you have the heart chakra, which is F. And then you have G for your throat, A for your third eye, and B for your crown chakra. And this is important to know when you actually start aligning them. So let's talk about aligning chakras. So let's look at sound or notes for chakra balancing. It's quite easy because, like I said, they correspond to specific notes, and I also told you already that they are corresponding to colors. So there's loads and tons of stuff out there. I tell you, before we even go into sound, what else you could do? You could even have pieces of paper in the 7 different colors and touch the color that you feel you need to touch at this point in time. There's many ways. You could also lie somewhere surrounded by 7 chakra colors or colors of the chakra. What also works, even though not, in my experience, not exactly 100% sometimes, is a rainbow colored candle or other things. Here, for instance, I don't know if you can see this well. If you come closer, you probably can see this. Here what you have is what is called a frosted singing bowl. And so what they are is they correspond to the notes. So you have here root, sacral, the solar plexus, the heart, and then it continues here with the remaining 3, meaning throat, third eye, and obviously crown. And so they are not only the color but also the note. So what you could do is I just, for showing this to you, you could do this. Oh, it's too big. I'll just get a smaller one so I can show you this to you better. So this would be if your sacral chakra is out of balance and you feel you want some healing, you just do this. So these bolts are, this is actually a chakra set, so they come in 7 bolts. And then you could go smaller, so these are frosted singing bolts for instance. And then you have here Tibetan bolts, chakra set. If you could come over here, I can show this probably better over here. So you have 7 Tibetan singing bolts, and they're much smaller, but they are also tuned by your chakras, and to make this easier, they come with little, usually corresponding little cushions here. Didn't quite work when they sent this to me. Again, it shouldn't be red in a way, because red is the root chakra. But it doesn't really matter, because as long as you know, it makes sense. There's a trick to all this. You can get an up, just a tuner, and it just shows you what you got. But after a while, you just know it. So using the color in combination with the sound is like a sort of a double whammy. So that works very well. The other thing that's important, obviously nobody expects anyone to go overboard. I'm studying sound therapy, so that makes sense to me to have all these things. But you could go this way and order tuning forks. They're also for chakras. Again, in my experience, it makes sense. The more you want to do with healing, you have to put the work in. Don't just use them on people because you mean well. Because these things are, all of these things, no matter what you do, people are in your care. So please remember this. Don't just wildly buy that stuff. Right? So these come in the frequencies, in the notes that these would come in, and so obviously they're much smaller and also a bit more affordable. And then what you can also do is, this is a tank drum, and I played this earlier. So this is actually pitched in a way in the note of C, but you can create other notes with it. So even though the whole thing is in C major, you can still create 11 notes. And it's really not important if you can play. You play this the way you feel this. Again, the importance of doing it yourself really is that you're spending time consciously with yourself. I keep repeating myself in my videos, but one of the best healers that you will ever have is your consciousness telling you spend time with yourself. Now let's just say you have no intention of buying any of these things, or really couldn't afford it or couldn't put it anywhere, which is all perfectly fine. There are CDs out there, tons of them, where they just play sounds in a specific note, and you just lie there and play it, or have it played to you in like a meditation, like a journey thing. So there's loads of ways. The other thing that is really important, like I just said earlier, here is when you have a combination of the sounds and the color. Here, for instance, is the first Tibetan bowl that I ever purchased, and it is in the note of E. Like I said earlier, it is really important. Many of my clients come to me with solar plexus issues, so it made sense. And then at a later point, I added a yellow cushion and found one which is really nice, which has the Om sound on it, which in itself is a healing sound. And then all you do is put it under it, and you could use it. So all these things are really, really powerful. Like I said, if you can't play anything, the color will help you. There's mantras that you can do. There's affirmations that you can do. Because remember, you don't have to do an affirmation about the chakra. You just need to understand, okay, well, a certain issue that you have in your life probably means you have always had problems here. So there is probably something that you haven't expressed yet. So you basically do a mantra based on what it is you want to change. So always be positive, rather than just memorizing the chakra, if that makes sense. But again, it is what it is. So there's loads of different things. These spells here are all in F, so they would all be for the heart. Then over here I have these tuning pipes, which are all planetary healing pipes. So they come in the vibration of planets. but obviously they're also tuned into notes. So there's other ways of healing. But I wanted to show you something, this is obviously quite sort of specialized. This is for people that do, sound therapy and are probably a bit weird. You could use a regular synthesizer to play these 7 notes, and I'm going to show you how this would work. So as I explained earlier, we have 7 chakras and 7 main notes. And regular keyboards start with the note of the first chakra, which is the C. So you go C, D, E, F, G, A, B. That's your 7 chakras, and then you go into C. So you can play it in any octave. Personally, I believe if you start the first time, you should use higher pitches. They tend to create a higher energy. So I'll show you how this works. So you just basically, all you need to do is, you could even put something on it, so it just stays down, and you go. You always have to feel this, and you can feel this in your root chakra or in your whole body. And then you go, and you just go through the notes. Most synthesizers these days have what we call an arpeggiator. Can you see this here? There's a little thing called arpeggiator. All it does, it basically repeats the note. So you switch it on, and then you go. And this can create a bit of dissonance, and that's sometimes what you need. Now, we will not go into it too much, but if you are a musician or musically inclined, you have some advantages here, because you can create chords and then address different chakras at the same time. So let me just switch it off. So you would go like, you play a chord, or you just use the arpeggiator and it goes through all the notes. And this is all just really games and different ways. It's all a bit, supposed to be a bit lighthearted as well. But the easiest way is to find a sound that you really like, and then just go. Another trick is to use numbers. It can take up to 3 weeks, 21 days for patterns to change. So you could just play the first note of, let's just say, of C, and then you count to 21. And after a while you get sort of a rhythm in your head, and then you play that. And then you play the 7 notes, and then you could start again at the highest note, or just use the whole keyboard. This is really not that important. All I wanted to highlight is that you don't have to spend hundreds and thousands of pounds on stuff you probably never use, because these are instruments that you can make music with. Or here I have a 10-pound keyboard over here. That's obviously not that nice, but it would probably do the trick. My advice would be, if you're new to healing and you really feel, there are so many things that have happened to me and I need to heal, let your therapist do this to you, if that makes sense. No, seriously, that's what we're for. Right? Go somewhere where you will be helped, and then they usually, either play a CD. There's tons on YouTube. You basically, start YouTube and you type in chakra healing, and you get music, along with it. So I just wanted to highlight this. So and then finally, what we can do, and that makes sense, because obviously mainly my work is all about shamanism, which means nature. Now we're recording this in October, and so what I found in the garden is this. You just follow me. So I collected them in the garden, and obviously they're not 7 chakras, because it's going to be very unlikely for you to find a blue leaf. But here in autumn, where this is also symbolically, because autumn is the time where things start to die away and then come back to life, and it is oftentimes old patterns that need to be resolved, things that need to be allowed to go. So that is all very symbolically. But you could have these leaves here. So you collect the red leaf for your root chakra, and you don't need to put it in your root chakra. You just need to be aware that the root chakra here It's all about, being grounded and maybe about childhood things. And all you need to do is to put it in your hand and ask your guides for healing. Oftentimes it helps to put both hands there, and then just feel this. Always take a deep breath with it. And then you do the same for the sacral chakra. Always make sure you express well. And then, this is important as well, do not throw them in the bin. They have to be, or ought to be, returned to nature. And then you have this one, supposed to be yellow. It was yellow when I collected it. So that's the solar plexus. And you put it right into the palm of your hand. And you go. And then you do the same with the heart chakra, obviously. Another way of doing this, should you be drawn to any of these colors in particular, the leaf won't mind if you carry it with you, right? And if it falls apart, then it has done its job, so it's all really good. But if possible, if you get it in nature and it has worked for you, by exhaling, it's basically saying, I am getting healing, but I also thank you for your service. And then the energy can be transmuted and sent to the universe, coming back. So it makes sense if they're being returned back to the white. I know this is a very long video, but we're rolling 2 videos into one, chakras and chakra balancing. This is by no means the end of chakra balancing, but I just don't think it makes sense to go on about this endlessly. So that's all we have time for. Towards the end of the video, which means after I stop talking here, I show you all the chakras and all the notes. But again, it's so easy just to Google this. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much.